A recent New York Times article detailed the latest shift in gym trends, the adult playground. The article sheds light on the wave of gym owners, both large scale and small, who have decided to take out exercise machines such as leg presses, pec decks, and lat pull downs in favor of opening up more floor space for gym goers to engage in something called functional exercise. What is functional exercise? Well, it depends on who you ask, but the general accepted notion goes something like this. A functional exercise employs some variation of a standing multi-joint motion that may or may not incorporate squatting, twisting, jumping, or balancing. Exercises may be done on both legs, but when possible, it is viewed by many functional theorists that performing the same exercise on a single limb is superior to double leg. Many exercises go through a wide joint range of motion. In addition, many of these exercises are performed on an unstable surface. The rationale behind performing these type of exercises is typically threefold. The first premise suggested by functional exercise enthusiasts is that the body is an integrated chain. Performing these complex movements incorporates more muscle groups, especially the core, ultimately strengthening the entire body as one integrated unit, in addition to increasing caloric burn. Secondly, they propose that these exercises are designed to either mimic our daily life and sport activity demands, or at least what they ideally should be, which in turn should lead to better health and performance. And third, functional exercise theorists propose that exercise machines, which are often seated with a fixed path of motion, strengthen muscles in isolation and therefore offer none of these benefits. Some exercise machines, such as the leg press, have been so maligned by some proponents of the functional training movement, they've been accused of running the gamut of being an inefficient waste of time to downright injurious to our joints and motor processing abilities. In fact, to quote Adam Campbell, the fitness director for Men's Health magazine, what's the real logic in sitting or laying down to train your legs? Functional fitness is far more bang for your buck because it works multiple muscles simultaneously, providing better overall strength and mobility and a higher calorie burn. So what is the logic in laying down to train your legs? Are Adam Campbell's postulations cutting-edge insights, or just unsubstantiated opinion bias that proliferates much of the exercise landscape? Well, let's take a look. Well, first, although we can engage in a circuitous argument as to the meaning of the word functional in the context of exercise, I think a soft landing place that most of us can agree on is that, simply enough, any exercise claiming to be a functional exercise should improve your body's ability to function in some way, from a professional rock climber to a bingo playing grandma. However, at the moment, in most gyms across the country, the term functional exercise has been hijacked by those that share the worldview expressed by Adam Campbell, and currently only allows for those exercises that appear to mimic some sort of circus act to be considered functional. Think a leg press isn't functional? A study by Voss et al. Demonstrated improved muscle power, endurance, and strength in senior citizens perform nothing but conventional machine-based leg presses, knee extensions, lat pull-downs, and chest presses for 12 weeks. So if we go by the concept that we are chain-like in our construction, as common sense would dictate, a chain is as strong as its weakest link. Proving the strength of some of the individual links may improve the entire threshold of the entire chain. And that sounds pretty functional to me. Secondly, the idea that using a machine somehow strengthens individual muscles in a vacuum that the brain is either not aware of or is somehow incapable of integrating into its everyday movement schemes is absurd. As a movement scientist, I can assure you that motor control theory is a very esoteric theoretical blend of math and physics. The two prevailing control theories of our time, Schmidt's generalized motor program, or GMP theory, and dynamic patterns theory, DPT theory, do not offer support for functional training folklore. Even on something like a knee extension machine, where the focus is on isolating one joint, the knee, you're never isolating one muscle. You're emphasizing one muscle or one muscle group. The amount of load, the speed at which you move at, using one leg or two at the same time, will influence the degree to which supporting muscles can contribute, as well as antagonistic muscles. By the way, Adam Campbell's claims that functional exercises work more muscles simultaneously may be true in certain contexts. However, one should not assume that more is necessarily better. A study by Bem et al. In 2006 on unstable surfaces and resistance training demonstrates that as stability decreases, more muscle activation does occur. However, the muscles are contracting in an isometric capacity, meaning they are trying to freeze your joints from moving. As most of us have experienced, at least anecdotally, freezing or contracting more muscle than necessary is what we do at the very beginning of learning a skill. Think about the first time you may have gone ice or roller skating. You probably moved pretty stiff and robotically. Over time, as we acquire smooth motion, we begin to contract only the necessary muscle at the necessary time. And third, unfortunately, those of us who appreciate machines, including the equipment manufacturers, have really not done enough to educate trainers and consumers on how to properly use them. A quality machine can manipulate resistance in a way to make the load match up more appropriately with the changes in joint angle as you perform an exercise, which can essentially decrease the risk factors or actually make the exercise more appropriately challenging. In addition, with some basic understanding of physics, the inherent restraint that's actually built into some of the machines can be strategically manipulated to alter joint forces and create literally thousands of different exercise experiences. What we really should be talking about here is the idea of transfer, which is essentially how much of our training environment will transfer into our ability to perform a skill. Transfer is based on how closely aspects of the skill, the environment, and the cognitive processing demands are meshed. Simply put, if you want to have a better serve in tennis, practice your tennis serve on a tennis court with a tennis racket and a tennis ball. The gym is best suited for working on the strength and conditioning necessary to provide your body with the raw materials necessary, including increased power output, endurance, cognitive processing ability that your brain will ultimately coordinate to perform smooth, skillful motion. The suggestion that functional type exercises are superior to conventional resistance training exercises for the purpose of skill transfer are not well supported. Anyway, to get back to the question posed by Adam Campbell regarding the logic in laying down to train your legs, here's some stuff to think about. Doing a standing squat, at minimum, requires the ability to lift 90% of your body weight against gravity from the lowest squatting point of the position. Now, that may not sound like a whole lot of challenge to the average gym rat, but to an octogenarian, that may be a real challenge. In fact, it may be enough of a challenge to make doing a squat prohibitive. A leg press offers the opportunity to be able to stress the lower body by progressively decreasing the resistance to the point where it becomes an appropriate load. So does doing a leg press make sense for anyone besides the elderly? Sure, you bet. So doing a squat, whether it is just your body weight or externally loaded via some type of external resistance like a free weight, as in this picture here, will create torque in the spine. What is torque? Well, technically, torque is force times moment arm length. But essentially what you're thinking about when you're calculating torque is you're looking at the amount of load and how far that load is from any given joint. So let's see if we can make a little example here to sort of drive the point home. So with my pencil, I'm illustrating the ground reaction force, or essentially the amount of load that's being applied to the joints in her body. And this isn't perfect, so bear with me on the pencil illustration here, but essentially this line is the line of force that's going through her body, all the way from where the load is being applied up at her shoulders and down through her foot. And the line, what I'm demonstrating here, is really the ground reaction force that's going back up. And so, let me draw it again. So it's kind of right about here. So here's the line of force, or here's the load. Now from here, to calculate how far this is from the joints in her lower back, from her spine, I'd make a perpendicular line. And I know this isn't, sorry, let's see if I can do it a little bit better. Well, so it should be a straight line that's perpendicular to this line of force that was here again. And so what we would do is we'd have to figure out how much load, and so we'd have to think about her upper body weight plus the amount of barbell weight. So let's just say all that together, let's just call it 50 pounds. And so we've got this line of force here that's representative of 50 pounds. Then we'd have to figure out, okay, so this 50 pounds, how far is it from each individual spinal joint here? And so let's just say this is 10 inches. And so 50 pounds times 10 inches equals 500 inch-pounds of torque on her lower back. Now the real question here is 500 inch-pounds of torque at her spine, is that a bad thing? Well, no, not necessarily. However, as we all know, just about everyone in the world has some form of back pain or has had some back pain or knows someone who does. And the load that we want to use to challenge our leg muscles may not be appropriate for the muscle supporting the spine. So if you had some sort of back injury and you're trying to challenge your lower body, you may not want to apply 500 inch-pounds of torque to your spine. As a matter of fact, if the trunk section is the weak link in a squat, that'll typically induce someone to lean their trunk further forward, what she's doing here basically, and that'll shift her center of gravity either further or anterior, which will create even more torque on her spine. So in this instance, an individual would either have to lower the load in order to accommodate the trunk, which would mean not challenging the legs as much as they could be, or they could challenge the legs but risk exposing their spine to loads that it may not be appropriate for. A well-designed leg press offers the opportunity to challenge the lower body without having to load the spine. The load is basically going through the hips and knees. So what about someone with no pathologies? Well, for the purposes of power training, I can't think of a safer method to do than using a leg press. Power training, technically work over time, or force times velocity, is generally understood in the gym setting as trying to move as rapidly as possible. When used appropriately, power training is an incredibly effective and valuable modality of exercise. However, due to the typically full exertion expressed in each rep, it can lead to fatigue very quickly. Fatiguing very quickly with a heavy load on your back could lead to potential injury if not monitored properly. So ultimately, in regard to Adam Campbell's comments regarding the bang for your buck statement, that's a misnomer. As mentioned above in the Voss study, machine-based exercises using heavy load and moving it as quickly as possible provided the most time-efficient method to realize significant increases in muscle power, strength, and endurance. Improvements in these areas, along with a healthy diet, will go a long way towards decreasing body fat and improving overall truly functional performance, which is most likely why most of us go to the gym in the first place. So what's the take-home message? Don't get caught up in the cliques and cults of exercise. Just like a carpenter uses more tools than a hammer, a combination of machine-based exercises, standing unstable multi-joint exercises, and playground-type exercises employed strategically all have their place in a well-balanced exercise program.